Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Wake Up and Dream. I'm here with Sara and Kelly. Yoo-hoo! And we are so excited because we get to be together, and that's what we've decided to do. But that is not always easy in the moments of each day, dealing with various people and circumstances. And that leads us to a quote that each of us actually are learning in our own journey. And this is from Julie Ciardi. She said, "Manage your mind in the moments of each day." So what does it mean to manage your mind? What does it come what comes to your mind, ladies? Is this hard or is this a piece of cake?
I think it's very challenging at times. When everything is like rainbows and butterflies, managing your mind doesn't seem so bad. But then there are circumstances that come up that are just really challenging. And I feel like it all comes back to just your perspective and how you are perceiving what is happening in front of you that impacts everything that follows. I don't know, Kelly, if you have anything that comes to mind with that quote, but I feel like it's something that is just, I always use it. I use as a constant reminder for myself to manage my mind and manage my feelings of circumstances in the moment of each day.
Right, because it can be such a struggle and you get wrapped up in the negative and the stress and shuffling at your daily schedule. Again, like Lisa was saying, with people and situations and circumstances. And you have to kind of take control of your mind and mindset and really be aware of what's happening, aware when you get stressed or you start to have that anxiety or judgment of yourself, of who you are as a woman, a wife, a mom, because all those things will arise. And you got to find that place, that safe place where you feel that you can kind of step back a little bit from the situation and say, take a deep breath, breathe in and out through your heart and be like, how do I want to handle this situation?
I feel like as you're speaking, Kelly, I like a situation that just is very recent comes to mind. Like even like as you're talking about just breathing and being a mom and those situations that come up, I'm just like, oh my God, is she in my head? Because you're talking about the situation that happened just last night with my son and how the result of this circumstance could have been way different had I not been aware of my mind and managed my mind and my feelings around it.
So what happened? We're all dying to know.
So yeah, being a mom is tough. You ladies understand that. All moms understand that. And sometimes you need to hold your ground with different consequences, right? And it's not always easy. And it kind of tugs at your mama heart because you want to be able to do things and provide things for your kids and not like punish them or discipline them. So yeah, last night, my son was kind of acting out a bit and I had a surprise. I didn't even tell him what the surprise was, but I had a surprise planned for after my other son, his karate class was done. So me and Ben were sitting there reading and he was being a scutch. He wasn't listening. He was swinging a toy and he kept testing me because he'd be like, well, I was just swinging it by me. And I was like, there's people around, you can't swing this toy. And it was just like little things, but he kept testing me. And I had to come back on my surprise. And I warned him and I said, listen, you're going to need to start listening because I cannot take you to a crowded place with you and your brother when you are not being a good listener. Like it's not happening. So if you are not listening, we're not going. And at that point, he didn't even know what the surprise was, but he kept testing me. He's like, okay, well, let's make a deal and let's do that. And, and he's trying to schmooze his way into getting this surprise anyway, even though he was, still not listening. So anyways, I ended up, he obviously it progressed and I told him we're not going. And at this point, my other son had no idea he was still in karate. And he threw a fit and we're in a waiting room of all these other parents. There's other children. And he was like, had the angry face on and he was not happy that I took this away from him. And it made me upset because I wanted to take them and their cousin was going to be there, but I couldn't give in to that moment because I wanted to set an example on, consequences happen, whether good or bad, to all the actions that you do. Managing my mind, it could have gone much differently. That whole scenario could have gone much differently. I had to take those deep breaths, Kelly. I had to kind of ground and center myself and know that, like, okay, even though this is really hard, this is what needs to be done.
Yes.
And
Even though it was hard, do you feel like this morning you made the right decision? Do you feel that even though, yes, you wanted to go, cousins are going to be there, this is something you wanted to surprise the boys with, but it didn't happen? But do you feel like, yeah, this is what needed to be done.
Yeah.
This is what needed to be shown, that mom gets to decide if you can't behave in the way that you're expected and that that they can behave? How do you feel this morning?
I think, yeah, and it was a hard night. So the whole way home from karate, tears and like the breathing, and it was their first day of camp, so they were exhausted to add to it. And I was worried that actually at night it was going to be a struggle to get them to sleep, but because they were so tired, they both fell asleep pretty quickly. And this morning I did talk to Ben about it, and I was like, mommy, it hurt mommy's heart to not be able to take you there, but you have to understand that there are consequences, and I really did not want to take that away from you, but I could not take you when I was not having good listening ears. And I always talk about that too, because with two of them, one goes this way, one goes that way, and then I'm just like, well, what do I do? So if they're not in that mode of listening, it's really hard for me to take them. I mean, Lisa, you're a twin mom, and you have, a couple of kids that are probably running, or back in the day were running every which way.
Oh my gosh, exactly.
So, yeah, it's a key
so
point.
relate.
They need to listen.
Yeah, and I think you staying that ground is harder in today's society, because I think there is pressure to um you know I look at some, and you try not to judge, but you can see the families where the kids are really running the show, right? You've seen that, where like the mom's like just trying to like, I don't know, survive, because you can see the authority has totally flipped.
But then you
And
have the nice little Instagram grid where you're doing all these fun things, even
exactly.
though the mom is like, oh my God, my kids are running the show. And I would have gotten great pictures last night, and we missed out on those like memories. But I know if we went, it would have been sending the wrong message to my son. And it would have been a really stressful situation for me when my kids were clearly overtired from camp and wouldn't have been able to handle all of the things. So you're right, because I feel like that extra pressure of just wanting to let your kids do everything and wanting to get those perfect Instagram worthy moments, it,
Mhm.
it hits
It
differently,
is a bummer. It's a bummer,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you were disappointed that you didn't get to treat them to that. Like,
Mhm.
that's a real thing. And sometimes it could have been easy to just give in, because you wanted the treat too, you wanted the reward. Um, but I also think, I'm curious, because every personality has weaknesses and strengths, but like, you're in a room of parents. Like, what were your thoughts and feelings as you were having a son that was, basically not being the ideal child? How did you feel about everybody watching you and their, that perception? Because that's a struggle for me.
It was really difficult. And normally if my kids are throwing tantrums like in the store, like I'll keep walking and I'll be like, see ya, like you're gonna throw a tantrum, and I don't typically let it, like if other parents are seeing me and they're throwing a tantrum, I kind of allow it and I'm okay with it to an extent. This was different because we were all in the waiting room and I couldn't escape it. I couldn't keep walking down the aisle, like I was just sitting
Right.
there. And the other thing that made it challenging is he was saying some pretty mean things. Like he was like really like, you're a mean mommy, like you don't let us do anything. And he was saying these things and I said to him, like, you have every right to be upset, but you need to understand that mommy doesn't want this either. And I was having this conversation, obviously in the earshot of other parents. It wasn't necessarily helping him in that moment. This morning, he appreciated those comments that I made, but he was so filled with all of these feelings of just like, I'm missing out. I didn't even tell you, it was to go to a campfire at the lake near our house and do marshmallows. Like it was a town event. So that was what they missed out on. And at this point, he still didn't even know that was what it was. He just was mad that I took something away that he wanted to go to because it was a surprise. So, trying to, have this conversation with him in a cryptic way, because he didn't know what I was actually taking away. And also just, on the mind of a 6-year-old who doesn't grasp all of these big feelings and emotions. Like I didn't want to tell him, stop acting like that, because he has a right to act like that. You're upset. And you know what, if you're gonna be like grumpy and I took a picture of his sad face because it's so cute. Like I was kind of sneaking it to send to my husband because he makes this angry face and he crinkles up his nose and he was like, you're mean. And I was just like, oh my God, you're so cute.
You're hilarious.
But yeah, so I was trying to manage it as best I could with him without yelling or raising my voice or, things that you kind of strive for as a parent, but when you're home, nobody's watching you. So you raise your voice and you kind of walk away. So it was very interesting to have to, deal with that situation with an audience, essentially.
For sure. I feel very in the same boat sometimes, but I want to point out 2 things that you've said. One, which is huge, I think, for a mom parent, was you're also aware, A, of his age, B, that he is entitled in a way to his feelings, but you also were very aware that he was tired and that kids that age can act out without even knowing what they're doing. And so for a mom to sit in that moment and manage your mind and really think about, you're not talking to your husband, right? You're not talking to a girlfriend. Like you're talking to a 6-year-old who's throwing a fit, who doesn't understand his emotional feelings sometimes. And I think that is so huge for parents. Like I always know when Jace is exhausted too. Like I'm just resonating with your story because I'm like, oh, he's tired. That's why we're whining and throwing a fit. So I think that's awesome, Sarah, that you've done that.
And I feel like a couple of years ago, I would have reacted much differently. I really do.
And it's a learning process, right? I mean, there's parenting books out there, but no one really gives you a manual based on, Lisa hit on it, your personality, your child's personality, the child's age, how much self-development and self-growth you've done, and how.
And yeah, the key is, sorry to cut you off here, Kelly, but the key is it's not going to be found in a parenting book about your child. It's all about me. I wasn't managing him at all. I let him do what he needed to do. I was managing my thoughts about what was happening in front of me. That is something that I've never read anywhere before, until starting to do this work. And it was really like, you don't have to change the person. I mean, we talk about this in every relationship. It's not about changing the other person. It's about changing you and your perspective and your mind. Yeah, it's so key. You just saying that kind of gave me chills.
I know, me too, actually. That's crazy.
Completely agree.
Yep, with all relationships, it's what you're bringing to the table and to the conversation is huge.
100%.
And speaking of conversations, I also love, my second thing that I wanted to just highlight was, you knew he wasn't really probably receiving your disciplinary reaction and your explanation. So you hit on it again this morning in a conversation with him, explaining why you did and what you said and why it was important, and that it hurt your feelings too, that you missed out. So when they're more in a calm state, again, Jace does this too. I don't know if it's a boy thing, if it's an age thing, if it's an us thing, but I mean, I can yell and scream all I want and Jace isn't going to receive any of it. But if I go back to him later, and if I was out of line, I apologize. I think that's also important, that mom was stressed, or this is how I took it. But in your case, when it was necessary and needed, to have that conversation when they're calm and ready to receive your take on what happened last night, I think that is extremely important. To have them realize, what they've done and how, what mommy may have expected differently from them. But it's also a teaching lesson that mom isn't just yelling and she never lets us do anything fun. Like they are yearning and aching for that discipline and that schedule and what mom expects and what you're expecting them to be as they grow up into a young man, and to just have all those good benefit, personality traits, if you will. So I think that is huge, Sarah, that you did all that. You did all the right things, I think.
Yeah, it was, but like I said, it was definitely a very challenging situation, but I handled it so much differently than I would have a few years back. And it all just was from my perspective, not from any other situation, not from any other external thing that helped me in this moment. It was all just from managing my mind in that moment. And you're right, like the conversation this morning, although it was brief, I was like, mommy was really sad we missed out too. And the first thing he said was, I love you, mommy. So like he knew, like, and it was like, it was nice to have a quick conversation, even though we were kind of rushing to get to camp, just to set the stage there. And like, so he knew that like, I didn't do it because I wanted to, and all of those things. But I do think that it's something that will stay with him and that he'll think about next time. My kids have way better memories than I do. So that I definitely get that from my husband. But I think that this teaching moment is something that is going to stay with him. And it actually impacted his brother a lot too, because I said to Anthony on the way home, I'm like, we're not going to get to go to the surprise, but if you want to get a treat when we get home, you're allowed to have a treat. Me and Ben are going to go upstairs and get ready for bed. Obviously that made Ben cry even more. And Anthony was like, if Ben can't have a treat, I think I'm going to pass on a treat tonight too. So both of them passed on a treat. But then this morning, Anthony's like, Ben, do you remember what happened last night and why we couldn't go to the surprise? And Ben's like, yes. And I was like, Anthony, we're not going to talk about it right now, because I didn't know which direction Anthony was going to go in. I was like, we're getting ready for camp. Me and Ben already talked about it. But it was just interesting how that lesson through Ben actually reached Anthony as well. So hopefully next time when we come into a situation where I'm like, you guys need to act, appropriately in this moment so that we can go and do something fun together, hopefully they'll kind of think twice and just adjust a little bit about, sometimes, like you said, Kelly, with tiredness and this and that, it's unavoidable. And I'm aware of that too. But they'll have that moment to potentially adjust so that we can continue on with our fun things we want to do.
And you're modeling it. That's the beautiful thing. You're modeling how you manage your mind. And, so much of life is caught and not taught. We have our teaching moments like you shared this morning, but how much of what you modeled for them yesterday in how you responded, you didn't lose it and yank them out of the room and, whatever, just totally.
I wanted to.
I know. Exactly.
It was a lot of work. I was like,
yes, exactly. And I guess one of the other things that I'm thinking of, because this is one thing that I'm learning, is let's say you would have, yelled at him, pulled him out of the room, just lost it because you weren't managing your mind, right? We need to understand that habits and beliefs and how we were raised, maybe this is a pattern. These patterns have been developed over sometimes years. um you know the example I'll bring in is marriage, because there's certain expectations that my husband has of me, I have of him. And to now try something different, or to manage my mind and go, you know what, I'm not going to respond this way. Well, 25 years of a habit of responding this way. So the encouragement I want to bring to the mamas out there that maybe don't have their mind managed as well as you did in that moment, right? Is to give yourself compassion and grace. To Once you're aware of, you know what, I don't want this to be my thought pattern. I don't want this to be how I roll out, in my relationships with my kids, my spouse. But if we're beating ourselves up going, oh my gosh, I'm such a bad mom. I didn't do this. You're going to stay stuck in the same pattern. The only way we can like create a new way to manage our mind and a new healthy way to react and interact and respond is to give that compassion to ourselves.
And I actually want to share one other thing on that point too, Lisa, because yes, I did manage my mind in a good way last night, mainly because I had an audience and I couldn't flip out. Whatever it was, I was able to do it. But it's funny because there are moments that I freak, as all moms do, and I have definitely been more compassionate toward myself for making those types of things, and I'll apologize, like you said, Kelly. But one thing that I was just talking about, a friend of mine was getting a new fridge, and it came and it was dented, and it was a whole thing. She had to send it back or whatever. And I told her a story. I'll keep this quick. We got a new fridge a couple of 3 years ago or so, and within a week of that getting the fridge, my kids were fighting. They had these swords and they were fighting, and somebody was crying and whatever. And I took the sword and I was like, enough. And I threw the sword, like not at them, but into the fridge, because I just kind of was getting it away from them because they were beating each other with these plastic swords. And I dented the fridge in 2 spots about a week after we got this brand new fridge. So I was saying to my friend, like, just about, I was like, my fridge is dented too. But I was saying that it actually happened, and we had an episode on this, just, things are happening for you. I see those dents and I remember how I reacted in that moment and how I was very quick to like grab that away and throw it and kind of throw a tantrum. Like, it wasn't toward my kids, but it was like toward this object that was, whatever. And I yelled at them and I threw this thing, and now I see that. And I'm like, I don't want to be that version of parent, like of a mom that I was in that moment. And it was a fleeting moment, but it was upsetting. When I saw I dented the fridge, then I started crying because this was a brand new fridge. I had to tell my husband that I just dented the fridge, but now it's there, and it's a constant reminder of that you don't need to parent that way. You don't need to react in that way. You can respond to situations in a calm manner and get across an even more clear point than if you actually react in a very like strong way like that. So it's, interesting how things have just kind of evolved. That was only 3 years ago. And now I have that constant reminder on my fridge.
And look at you now, right? Like,
there you go. Still a work in progress.
We're never perfect all the time. We do the best we can in every single moment. Life happens, but trying to manage your mind in those moments, whether they're big, small, in between, it's just so important. And also, to kind of tag along with Lisa, like making sure that you think of the positive things that you can be as a mom, not the negative things. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be a yeller. I don't want to be da 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 da. I don't. Make a list of the things you want to be, how you want to show up as a mom, considering hard situations like Sara just endured last night, writing down the positive things she did last night and reminding herself of the good things that she did. So, you guys, thanks so much for this episode. This was awesome. Sara, thanks for sharing this story that hopefully there's some moms out there who can relate, right? Like, oh my gosh, I've been there, I've done that, I have felt all the things, and maybe can take away a few things for next time when their kiddos are acting up, and just take a little piece of your advice on how to handle the moment. But with that, everybody, thanks for tuning in to this episode. So glad you were here. Until next time, wake up and dream.